New Orleans. You might be wondering why you'd ever build a city here in a place prone to flooding and hurricanes. The answer is right here, the Mississippi River, which connects much of North America to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, with that out of the way, if you ever looked at a map of southern Louisiana, you might be wondering, why did they pick this location to build the city when we are so far from the Gulf? The answer is the natural levee. As the river picks up mud and sediment as it travels down, it deposits this on the banks of the river. Think of a bowl floating in water. The high ground is the land along the river. Much further south in New Orleans, there is less and less of this high ground. The city was founded in 1718 by Bienville, a French Canadian. This was in an effort to connect French Canadian colonies with France. It was a well-planned, modern French city laid out on a grid. The issue was how to fund this new city. Bienville came from a huge family of fur traders, and he didn't have the funds. The French had been at war for years, so their treasury was also empty. Along came a man named John Law. Scottish by birth, he had killed a man over a woman in London and fled to France. In France, he grew close to the French royalty by gambling with them. It was then he hatched a scheme to finance the new French Louisiana colonies. He would establish a company, the Mississippi Company, and sell stock to the growing French middle class. The main thing he sold everyone on was that he was going to grow tobacco. This created an economic bubble. More recent examples of economic bubbles include the 2008 Florida housing crisis and the Beanie Baby craze. This particular bubble burst when one of the members of the French royal family walked down to John Law's bank and demanded his money back in hard currency, gold, instead of the script John Law had been printing. Overnight, the bank failed. John Law's stock and the script he had been printing, the money, was now completely worthless. I think the most fascinating part of this entire story is that John Law wasn't a con man. He arguably would have been much better off in his own life if he had just stolen all that money and skipped town. But he really thought he could make himself and everyone else rich, so he reinvested all the money back into the city. And he did this, unfortunately, by buying slaves. Copying what the British were doing in Virginia, he imported 2,000 Africans into the city. In response, Bienville signed into law Code Noir, a set of slave codes based on French law. One important aspect of Code Noir is that everyone in the colony, both slave and free, had to be Catholic and had to attend church on Sunday morning. After Mass, nobody was allowed to work, including enslaved Africans, who were granted a public square to gather in. This later became known as Congo Square, and it is where present-day Louis Armstrong Park is located. Here, on their day off, Africans would gather, dance, and play music. As far as we can tell, this is where jazz was born. More recently, a man named Cosmo Matassa opened a recording studio on Rampart Street, across from the Congo Square. He was obsessed with a new style of rhythm and blues coming out of the clubs and bars in New Orleans. This became known as the New Orleans Sound, and he recorded many of Fats Domino's early singles, along with Little Richard. This music would become hugely popular in the UK and inspire a generation of British youth, including the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. That music would make its way back to the States, and by 1965, every teenager in the world would be listening to it.